Elias Pettersson, not a great tournament for him. He plays 3 games. He has 0 points. And his coach, the guy who was supposed to save the day, Sam Alam, benches him for the third period. In Sweden's only win of the tournament was the game where Pettersson had the lowest ice time of any player in the game. Not great, Harm. Not great.
He looks slow. There's nothing dynamic about the way he plays, which is the same that we've seen from him in Vancouver. And even when you go back to the flashes he has shown where he's played well, right? Like let's say the Toronto game right before the Four Nations break, he had the gorgeous assist to Philip Hronek. Those plays have been at a standstill, right? Even some of his earlier assists and points that he's racked up, it's been from stationary positions where he's leveraging his IQ and his vision to execute those plays rather than moving his feet. He just looks slow. And when you don't have that speed, that's an issue I was talking to you about in previewing this tournament is looking at Sweden down the middle. They don't have that game-breaking dynamic pace, the puck carriers. And in a tournament that's this tight checking, you're just not going to have time and space to cook. You're going to need to either think the game at an elite level and anticipate and be in the right spots, which is hard to do because everybody at this tournament is an elite player, or you're going to need those bursts where you can somehow separate the way guys like McDavid and McKinnon have. And of course, Pettersson's nowhere near that. At this rate, he's not even a lock to make Sweden for the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is concerning. I mean, even this season, he may not hit 55 points this year. Like it's rough. And another important takeaway from this tournament, I want to stop hearing people criticize and blame Rick Tocchet for Pettersson's struggles.
Yep.
Like that one bothered me for a while because, yeah, I can agree that overall is Tocchet's system and playing style conducive to creating a lot of offense? No. And do I believe that there's a possibility he's held this team's overall offensive generation back? Yeah, 100%. But with Pettersson specifically, there was a lot of talk about, well, Pettersson typically creates a lot off the rush. Tocchet's system is forcing him to play dump and chase hockey. And it was like, I was just watching Pettersson going, even if he had Bruce Boudreau back, and Bruce said, create all you want off the rush, Pettersson can't beat anybody up the ice carrying the puck. So how is he going to create off the rush? How is he going to create in transition? So seeing Pettersson play for Sweden in an environment away from Tocchet proves to me that coaching isn't the primary issue here.
If we're talking about concern level among Canucks fans, right? Should Canucks fans be concerned with this tournament? I don't think the answer is yes because, Petey didn't perform and this was a chance for him to rebound, get his confidence back. I don't think that's the reason it should be a concern because really all we saw is the player that we've all seen for a while now. I think the concern for me and the concern for Canucks fans should probably be that this theory that, if you just get him out of Vancouver, if you just get him away from JT Miller, if you just get him away from everything going on in Vancouver this season with the Canucks, the drama, all that sort of stuff, if you just get him away from that, get him back with his countrymen, get him back with his coach that he won an SHL championship with, get him back with that guy, Sam Alam, everything's going to be fine. That theory's dead. And I think there was legitimately NHL front offices, and maybe there still are probably, that really believe that they can, if they get him out of Vancouver, if they bring him into their system, into their world, that he'll figure it out. And hey, maybe that can still happen. Maybe it can still happen, and maybe there's teams that are out there. But I'll tell you, if I'm an opposing NHL general manager, I am not bucking up for Elias Pettersson the way I might have, 3 months ago, if I was talking trade with the Canucks. I'm not looking at trading for Elias Pettersson right now. This was a tournament where I thought it could have been a chance for him to not establish himself, but reestablish himself, I suppose, to the rest of the league, and he didn't do it.
It's also so hard to pin down a why. Everybody's searching for the why, and it's so difficult to do from the outside. We've spent a lot of time dissecting the potential theory around knee tendonitis, but it's also hard for me to look at that and say, well, Like if he was truly hurt or injured, then why would he have played in this tournament in the first place?
Yep,
Right?
exactly.
We,
It's
we
not the worst case of knee tendonitis ever. I see people talking about the flu bug. Like, I'm sorry, he was still the worst player on his team, even if they were all ravaged with the flu. So unless he got the flu worse than everybody else, and he's got the rarest case of knee tendonitis in the world, stop it with the excuses.
well, also we saw Alex Pietrangelo pull out of the tournament where he
Yep.
was healthy enough to play NHL games, but recognized that I've got lingering things that I need to deal with. I am going to take this 4 Nations off. Like that's why it's just so confusing, because to me, Pettersson doesn't physically look right in terms of his skating. He looks so much slower than he was 2 years ago. And I've assumed for a while that there is some level of injury impact involved, regardless of what he or the team says about him being healthy. And yet he plays in this tournament, so you have to kind of assume that he is at least close to 100%.
He chose to go. Like, he chose to go, right? At the end of the day, he chose to go to that tournament, and he didn't play well. That's what it comes down to. A lot of Pettersson takes in the chat right now. I don't know what else to say, really. Like, it was a disappointing tournament. This was a chance for him to reset. And I think the only thing that's really a concern is that maybe his trade value took a hit this weekend. You didn't see anything different, so it's not a concern. Like, oh my gosh, would you have liked to see him bounce back? Yeah, all of us would have. But I don't think you're surprised by what happened. I think if you're a Canucks fan, you are a bit worried that now the rest of the league has seen it on a different team.
I'm also so tired of the moral victories around his defensive play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we get it. He's good defensively. Yes, you didn't pay him $11.6 million to play good defense.
Drew O'Connor plays good defense.
Yeah, it's like, and look, it does matter in the sense that, okay, even at his floor, he's not losing you games, but come on, where's the ceiling? Where's even the midpoint level of his play? Yeah, it's just it's frustrating. It's disappointing for Canucks fans, and the more it continues in this direction, the more likely it is that this club will consider dealing him before his July 1st no movement clause kicks in.
What's a bigger risk? Holding on to him and this not turning around once he has that no move clause? Or is it no trade or no move? It's full no move.
Full no move.
Okay. What's riskier? Holding on to him and that full no move kicking in, or moving him ahead of the deadline, he goes and figures it out somewhere else? What is riskier for the Vancouver Canucks today?
I would hold him through the season.
Through the season?
Yeah.
Okay.
And make a decision in the summer.
And so what's riskier, going into next year or making that decision in the summer? Also,
you need to make a decision in the summer. Like before July 1st, you need to be, okay, either we're sort of all in on this guy and we're convinced he can figure it out, or like that's a point where if you've got doubts, if you've got concerns, you got to pull that trigger before the player has all the leverage.
Yep.
And again, like I say this as somebody who for such a long time I've given Pettersson the benefit of the doubt. For so long, I've given Pettersson the benefit of the doubt, right? And even when we were having these conversations around should they trade JT, should they trade Elias Pettersson, they can only pick one to keep. You and I both agree that given Pettersson's age, he's in his prime. JT Miller's about to turn 32 years old. Probably makes sense to keep the younger guy in his prime. And I'll also say this: I surveyed NHL front offices. That was the consensus view.
Yep.
Even the front offices and the execs that like JT Miller as a player right now, like some of them would say, if I had a playoff run right now, I would take JT Miller. But if you're the Canucks, they're not cup contenders this year. You're building for your long-term future. You probably move JT and keep Elias Pettersson, right? So this is the perspective I've come from all of this at. But he needs to show something down the stretch. Like this is the audition. Like this is it. He's got 27 games in the regular season and a playoff opportunity if the team punches their ticket in to prove that he deserves to stay in Vancouver.
Here's the thing. It's been over a year now. Mike Lavalley in the chat pointing out that it's been 13 months. It's been over a calendar year of this, right? Last time Pettersson looked like himself was January. All-Star break hits. This is the Pettersson that we've seen. I I look at this situation, and there's Rico Shea in the chat is talking about don't wait till the draft. Don't wait for rock bottom. He's going to devalue himself even more. I would be open to moving him ahead of the trade deadline, I think. And I ultimately, this isn't revisionist. We were talking about, yeah, you got to trade JT Miller. But we also said, yeah, and you might want to trade both. And I understand it's scary, the idea of trading both. But I think it's becoming clear that it was the idea was okay. Maybe if you trade JT Miller, Pettersson during that 10-game leave of absence that Miller had, 15 points. Maybe he'll figure it out once JT Miller goes. And I understand it's just a Four Nations break, and maybe he'll turn it on from now until March 7th, NHL trade deadline. But man, it is starting to really just look like this is a guy that this is just who he is at this point. And hate to say it.
I wouldn't be rushing to do it ahead of the trade deadline simply because I think there are so many teams that are so hungry for top flight centers that even with how concerning his contract looks right now, people would look at like put it this way, right? Look at Pierre Dubois. Like everybody thought that contract was untradeable, and at the time, Pierre Dubois was coming off like a 40-point season, massive like $8.5 million cap hit. Not to mention the character concerns around how many times he asked for a fresh start and the work rate concerns, and the Kings still found a way out of that contract, right? So like the point I'm trying to make is now you're talking about a guy in Pettersson who, for most of his NHL career, has been a bona fide first-line centerman. He's got a 102-point season on his resume. Just last season, he had 89 points. There are going to still be teams, regardless of if whether he figures it out down the stretch or not. There are going to be teams that come the offseason, especially with how many clubs are going to have cap space, they'll be willing to take the risk because otherwise, good luck finding a first-line center. Good luck finding a franchise sort of player through the draft for unless it's like on the trade market or in free agency. Those types of guys are impossible to find outside of the draft. Now, there's a chance he could burn you if you're a buying team. There's a chance you could acquire him and he doesn't fit out, and now you're stuck with an inefficient contract. But there's also an upside case where you were able to acquire a 90-point centerman in his prime.
Nar just threw this out there. Petey or PLD on your team? Pick one.
Well, and look at PLD's figured it out in Washington.
PLD's playing Selke level defense. I might have to put him on my Selke ballot this year. Petey or PLD, pick one. Cap hits too. At this point in time, PLD's the better player for the team. So, like, it's not even a question. PLD's the top line center right now.
He's been better this season.
I'm saying this as the number one Pierre-Luc Dubois hater in the world. Like, the point totals are there, the defense is there. But again, here's the thing. The ceiling, right? Like, at the end of the day, this is probably Pierre-Luc Dubois' ceiling, in all seriousness. Yeah. And Elias Pettersson's ceiling, what we've seen from him before, at least, is much higher than this. So, you know, as we get a little more serious here, the answer still is probably Petey. But I think that's what's frustrating to people is it's just, where is it? Where's that ceiling? Bring it back. And how do you get back to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you.
But here's the thing. And people are in the chat are like, you guys are rushing. No, go back and watch the January 31st emergency episode. Actually, I don't think we did one. The instant. No, it was. Yeah, it was. Instant reaction. All that content we put out when the JT Miller trade happened. Immediately, we were talking about the idea that, okay, this trade was made so that the Canucks could have some runway to see what Elias Pettersson looks like without JT Miller, right? If that was a concern, now it's not a concern. Now it's gone. Let's see what Elias Pettersson looks like. And hey, if you're sitting there saying, well, wait longer, wait till the trade deadline, wait until the draft, you can have that opinion. That's absolutely fine. All I'm pointing out is that at that time, we said now it's a chance to see how Pettersson looks without Miller, and if it doesn't turn around, that they would be looking to trade him. That's what Frank Seravalli said on this show at the time, and he certainly hasn't shown anything that makes you think, yeah, of course he's worth keeping to this point in time. And hey, it's February 19th. Maybe people can say it's too soon to be having this conversation, but honestly, it's just it's soft. It's you're watching a soft player right now, and it's not what Pettersson is. Like, That's not what Pettersson is. He's not a soft player. He's never really shied away from contact. He's always gone into the dirty areas. He's always cut into the middle of the ice. He's been a cerebral player throughout his career, and right now we're watching a shell of the player.
Yeah, I'm also trying to find the old article. I remember when Jim Rutherford first took over this team during either his first or second press conference, he was asked about the core of this team, right? Because this was a transitional phase where a lot of people were wondering, is this club going to rebuild? And I remember him one by one going through the different players that made up this core, and he was sort of giving them a vote of confidence, right? He was talking about how Quinn Hughes was like basically gave him all the praise in the world, called him world-class defenseman, described Demko like a franchise goalie, then went to Pettersson, and his commentary was a lot more reserved, where it was more of like you've got the potential, but you've got to prove it. And I remember at the time being sort of surprised, hearing that he didn't get the same type of endorsement that Hughes or Pettersson did at the time, especially because if I recall correctly, that was, can't remember which season it was directly, but it stood out. And like the thing I've always thought about,
22.
Right. So in the first half, Pettersson had been struggling. At January, at that point, he started to really start producing again. And the message was sort of like he's still got stuff to prove type thing. The other thing I've thought about is, remember that Jim Rutherford, he had Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh. Like that's the bar that he's consistently going to be looking for, is like the best forward on my team. And not just the on-ice performance, but even just your habits as a leader, your commitment to winning, how dedicated you are. I think we can clearly see, for example, like Quinn Hughes, when you look at how obsessed and how dedicated he is to his craft, look at the way he, through various stages of his career, how he turned his shot, which was a weakness, into a strength, his defensive play, which was a question mark, into like a high-end elite part of his game, how he continues adding things to his offensive arsenal and has leveled up to a Hart Trophy level. Like he's cut in the same mold of Crosby when it comes to how wired and how dedicated he is to winning. There's also that question mark around Pettersson. It isn't just the on-ice results. It's like, why haven't you leveled up? The talent is there. And remember when Patrick Alvin had that interview with Ian McIntyre in January that like everybody was talking about it. Alvin was implying that they weren't thrilled with the way Pettersson prepared himself heading into the season.
That much is clear. And I like that you bring up the Crosby comparison as well when it comes to what the bar is for Rutherford and for Alvin as well. Okay, Harm, this has been one big anyone else.
Like one more thing I'll say though, like the absolute best case scenario by a long shot is he figures it out down the stretch. Now, I'm not saying I'm very confident he'll necessarily do it, but even if you go down the path of, let's say he doesn't quite figure it out in the final 27 games, you look to move him ahead of the draft, this franchise is going to be in a really tough spot, because how are you going to find like top two centers essentially? The team already kind of needs another high-end centerman. You trade Pettersson away, and of course you're going to get some valuable pieces back, but you're not going to get a number one center back. And so now all of a sudden you're going to, in very short order, have to replace essentially Pettersson and Miller, so that the team can contend during the remaining years of Quinn Hughes' current contract. That's an awfully tough task.
It's going to be really tough to navigate, is the thing. Ultimately, it's not, like I said, we're talking about silver bullets. Not a silver bullet to just trade Pettersson and everything gets better. Certainly not. But at least we're gonna have the conversation.